So just as we finish filming today's episode, and you're actually going to see me find out in real time at the end of the show, the Browns restructured not only Myles Garrett and Joel Bitonio's contract, but also David Njoku to clear $2.7 million in cap space and bring their total cap space up to $37 million. Now, at the start of the video you're about to watch today, in real time, I did not know that move had taken place because it hadn't taken place yet. But now I really wonder, what is Andrew Berry doing? $37 million in cap space is a lot of money. Does he just want to roll it all over? Or is he truly clearing cap space for some ginormous blockbuster move, and this was the last little couple of cents and dollars he needed to get the money free to make some sort of move? Now I'm definitely ears perked up. And in the video I said there was a 94% chance there's no big move coming. I'm probably now at a 92% chance. But enjoy the rest of the video. I'm sorry for the time traveling, but that's the nature of the beast, baby. David Njoku also had his contract restructured. Are the Browns in for a big move? We are going to break down all of the money moves lately that have resulted in Myles Garrett and Joel Bitonio's contracts being restructured, and whether or not there is some big splash, free agent, or trade on the horizon. Welcome into the Cleveland Browns Report, though. Matthew Peterson here, feeling a bit under the weather, so if I sound a little off, I'm just battling a cold right now, so just bear with me for the next couple of days. But I do want to preface with this. Despite all their contracts being restructured and the Browns having the most cap space in the NFL to the tune of $35+ million, I am 94% sure that no big move is coming. But because of the man on screen, as I like to call him, Blockbuster Barry, I'm not even 99%, right? I originally put 95, and then I thought, nah, Barry's good for an extra percent. So I'm down to 94% sure that there isn't some big move coming that the Browns have to clear cap space for. I'll explain why I think they're doing these moves and these restructures, but we are talking about Andrew Berry. Who saw him trading for Zadarius Smith one Friday night in May? Not me. I got caught at date night, and I had to leave Shay at the restaurant for a minute. So let's jump into all of the news here, because the Browns have restructured some cap space, like Joel Bitonio to clear $7.8 million, and then most recently Myles Garrett to clear $12.8 million. And with that, the Browns have over $35 million in cap space, which is the most in the NFL. So why are they doing this, right? Why are they restructuring contracts? Well, my prediction is they want a bigger rollover from 2023. Now, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the nitty-grittiness of the cap space, but if you're unfamiliar, the cap is a mystery, and it's an enigma that no one ever really solves. But basically, at its core, the meat and potatoes of cap space is when you restructure a player's contract, you lower their cap hit for that season, in this case 2023, but raise their cap hits in the following years of their contract. So why do teams do this? Well, if they want immediate cap space, cap relief to go out and sign someone, they could restructure the contract of a player that they believe is going to be there for the rest of their current contract, which in Myles Garrett and Joel Bitonio's case is probably true. Not probably, definitely true. But like guys like Amari Cooper, maybe not so true. So you lower their cap hits for this year to free up cap space for this season, but you raise future cap hits. So why is Andrew Berry doing this? Well, there's a couple ideas. Mine is he wants to roll over more money into next year, $35 million, which will free up some of the negative deficit they are in. The Browns are currently in the red by $60-ish million, but you get to apply $35 million of that, so that takes a good chunk of that credit card debt away. By the way, they're not even the worst in the NFL for next year. CC the New Orleans Saints. Sorry, Trace. But maybe it's for this reason. Maybe it's because they want to extend some players. I did see, I think it was Tony over at ESPN Cleveland say that they might be looking to extend Nick Chubb, who is under contract through 2023 and 2024. Their other extension candidates include Donovan Peoples-Jones and Grant Delpit. I don't think that's what these moves are for. I don't see Andrew Berry extending either of those players before the season gets underway. Sure, maybe a mid-season extension like he did with Bitonio and Wyatt Teller if DPJ is putting up really good numbers and he's like, you know what, I could wait until free agency and see if I get more money there, but Andrew Berry's offering me a bunch of guaranteed money today, I'll take the guaranteed G's. But for DPJ and Delpit, I don't think you're going to see a preseason extension, maybe a midseason extension, but maybe Nick Chubb, because he is, I wouldn't say the heart and soul of this team, but he's definitely a big artery in the heart and soul of this team. And so if Andrew Berry believes Nick Chubb has a few more good years left in him, maybe he extends him, kind of spread out that cap hit over the next few years. I think Andrew Berry would rather just ride out the next 2 seasons of Nick Chubb and see how he looks after 2024. But if it's not to roll over money and it's not to extend a player, Andrew Berry is planning a big move, right? And he is mobilizing and he is getting his ducks in a row and he is freeing up cap space and he's got $35 million to spend because most teams want to have about $5 million or so plus going into the season just to leave money in the bank for a rainy day. Well, what's this other $30 million for? I don't think it's for any of these free agents. When you look at the free agent market right now, none of these guys are commanding even half of $35 million, right? Kareem Hunt or Leonard Fournette would sign a 1-year, $4.5 million contract, right? You don't need $35 million to spend on those guys. I honestly struggle with just filling out a 5 names here of players that the Browns could sign in free agency right now, because outside of running back, their roster is pretty set at this point. But if you are curious, who could the Browns be looking to sign with all this money? I don't even like these names in terms of fits for Cleveland right now, but they're the best names I could really come up with. So if it's not for a signing, what about a trade? I did see an interesting article from SB Nation, and they had 5 trade targets, so I thought I would present them to you guys and break them down one by one, starting with Aaron Donald. This has been a fun name throughout Browns Twitter. There's no real good reason why Aaron Donald has been not even linked to the Browns, but just been mentioned with the Browns, other than, deep internet rumors in the offseason when everyone's bored and we all just want to fantasize about Aaron Donald coming to our team. Because Aaron Donald is, the best defensive player in football, right there with Myles Garrett. Multiple NFL Defensive Player of the Year winner. Last year, he only played 11 games, but before that, 3 straight years of 12-plus sacks as a interior defensive lineman. That is just absolutely absurd. I don't need to be Aaron Donald's advocate here and try and sell him on you guys. We all know how game-changing Aaron Donald is, but there is one problem when it comes to trading for Aaron Donald. There's a lot of problems, but there's one big problem when it comes to trading for Aaron Donald. With what picks? I could buy into the Rams trading Aaron Donald if they want to do a hard reset. Aaron Donald goes, you know what? I've got my ring from LA. I kind of want to chase a ring somewhere else. Could you trade me? I could see that actually happening. But I just don't think it's going to happen with the Browns. Because the Rams are going to want a first-round pick back. And that is something Cleveland cannot offer. They don't have a first-round pick. They have a second next year. They have a third. They don't even have a fourth. I don't see the Rams taking anything less than a first and more for number 99. So for this reason, if Aaron Donald truly does become available, surely the Rams could find better offers from other teams that do have first-round picks. That is the biggest hurdle I have to get over with Aaron Donald potentially coming to Cleveland, and potentially is a very strong usage of the word there. I don't know what the Browns could offer to make a competitive deal to get Aaron Donald. But I can tell you this much. If Aaron Donald does come to the Browns, it would be unbelievable. Now, I do want to throw a hypothetical your way, kind of a would you rather. Just hear me out. Would you rather the Browns get Aaron Donald, but Deshaun Watson is mediocre? If you're playing deal or no deal, are you taking that deal? Knowing Aaron Donald joins the Cleveland Browns, the Rams do it for a second and a third. No one knows how Andrew Berry did it. Build a statue today. However, Deshaun Watson is mediocre this year. Deal or no deal? Personally, I would do no deal. Because we saw how with the Rams and mediocre quarterback play, they could only go so far. It wasn't until Matthew Stafford got there that they really got over the hump. I don't want to be the Rams team that loses to the Patriots in the Super Bowl and doesn't even score a touchdown. So I'd go no deal. You really go as far as your quarterback goes in this day and age. Moving on to their second trade target, we'll kind of rapid fire some of these bad boys. Linebacker, cornerback, DB, safety, I don't know what he is anymore. Isaiah Simmons, former top 10 pick, right, by the Arizona Cardinals out of Clemson. And he has had a rough time just kind of figuring out his identity in the desert, right? They keep moving him around from linebacker to edge rusher to defensive line to corner. Like, in what world does a player play defensive line and cornerback in the same season? It's unbelievable to really think about the versatility of Isaiah Simmons. I think this is probably the best chance of all the long shots we're going to look at today because he happens to come at a somewhat position of need for Cleveland, which is linebacker. I think if you had the ability to pick a position from another team and add it to the Browns, I would probably pick linebacker because that's the one spot where it's a little bit of a question mark, right? Is Anthony Walker and Taki going to bounce back healthy? Can JOK play a full season? Simmons at least has been available so far in his career, but I still think this is a long shot. Moving on to some of the other trade targets, Davante Adams was on this list. I don't see that happening. Jonathan Taylor, I get it because of like the newsiness of the recent trade permission he was given or permission to seek a trade. But no, not with Nick Chubb, of course. And then Jake Matthews, part of the Matthews family legend, but moving to left tackle and send Wills back for Matthews to Atlanta. Why would Atlanta do that? They love Jake Matthews. He has been their franchise icon since they drafted him. I don't see why the Falcons would do this. So, of all these 5 trade targets, and SB Nation didn't act like these were all locks or something, all these are big reaches. I think Simmons is the only one that I think could have a remote chance, but even then, I don't think it's more than a 5% chance. Now, before we get on to the rest of today's show, I do want to give some quick shout-outs to our recent subscribers here at the Browns Report. Rodney, Mike Jackson, Aaron Ford, Tyler Thomas, kind of flipped that O on the other side, but shout out to you for subscribing as of late. And hey, if you want to get on screen, subscribe because we give shout-outs pretty frequently here at the Browns Report. Moving on to the second half of the show, I want to talk about Deshaun Watson for a moment and just a state of the union, if you will, for Watson and the offense. Because we've got some conflicting reports over the last week or so, stemming from the joint practices to today, about where this offense and specifically this passing game with number 4 is at. And this really took a life of its own after Zac Jackson wrote this article for The Athletic, and he said, stock up, stock down, stock down. The passing game has been completely unimpressive. Anything that involves Deshaun Watson remaining in the pocket has been an adventure. And not since early in camp have we seen strings of consecutive completions in any 11-on-11 period. There have been good moments. Here's the issue with training camp. We don't really get, and by we, I should be more specific. You, me, your average fan at home, the guy on Twitter trying to get some highlights and get just a recap of how everyone looked at training camp that day, we are so reliant on really 2 groups of people. The beat reporters that go to every single one, and your 3,000 fans that get tickets and you get word of mouth through them. Let's start with the 3,000 fans or so that get tickets. Well, they're not really the best X's and O's digesters. So they often don't really know what they are looking for in training camp. These are half the time just walk-through practices. So you don't really have a good grasp of what to see that's good and what to see that's bad, right? Whereas in a game, you don't need to be a big film room expert to know that was a good play or that was a bad play. So that's Group A. It's hard to really know what they say, if it's real or accurate or not. Then there's Group B, which is your beat reporters. And that's where most of us go to get a good idea of how is everyone looking at camp? Who's looking good? Who's looking bad? Well, unfortunately, the beat reporters don't always see eye to eye because we get tweets like this back to back on my Twitter timeline of Chops tweeting out Watson to Cooper, 40-yard touchdown on 11-11 to end practice. And then at the same exact time, Zac Jackson tweets out something somewhat similar, but also kind of different. It was probably a sack, but practice ends with a 35-yard touchdown pass Watson to Cooper. They had a 30-yarder on what I think was 4th down in the previous drill. Pass rush was the most impressive group of the day. but it was the best day of 11 on 11 passing in weeks. So on one hand, you got Chop saying it was a touchdown. Okay, if you only see that tweet, you kind of leave Twitter and you talk to your friends and you're like, dude, Watson and Cooper connection is heating up. They're looking awesome. But then the tweet right below it from Zac Jackson says, well, yeah, that's cool and all, but in under game circumstances, Watson would have been sacked. So that touchdown pass never happens. So that connection doesn't really exist. So it's a little difficult to really have a good idea as to what's going on in training camp because we are so reliant on the beat reporters that if some of the beat reporters are, and I don't really blame them for this, a little afraid to speak up against what the rest of the group is saying and be a dark cloud and say, well, actually, I don't think it has been that good. Well, then everyone's just going to roast that beat reporter, which in this example is Zac Jackson, going, we don't want your negativity out here. You Baker, bro, get out of here. We've heard Watson is great. Well, yeah, you're hearing it from all the other reporters, and I don't think those reporters are wrong or the reports are inaccurate, but it's all about the eye test in training camp, and more or less people tend to fall in the same line of thinking because they look around and see, what is every other reporter saying? Good things. Well, I don't want to be the black sheep. I don't want to be the one dark cloud in the sky and say, I don't think it's all as good as advertised. Now, we've got some more things from this article I want to break down, and I've already taken up probably too much of your time today. But Zac Jackson also wrote, David Njoku has been open since July 22nd, and Watson usually finds him. There have been a few wow throws by Watson, and it's perfectly reasonable to think that with Amari Cooper, a limited participant for much of camp, and Elijah Moore getting days off to heal his ribs, there's time for a turnaround. I'm going to say, yeah, it's probably pretty important to have your wide receiver one. That's why training camp is tough to really evaluate in terms of buying in or not buying into these storylines. When the regular season rolls around and Amari Cooper's out there for pretty much every single passing down, that's going to change how the offense looks. Same for a healthy Elijah Moore. So when Deshaun Watson is playing with Mike Harley Jr. and Dalen Baldwin and Jalen Baldwin, or all these guys, Jalen Darden, whatever, all these second and third stringers, it's not going to look as pretty. But the good news is they won't be the guys on the field in the regular season. And we have more from this to look at in just a moment. But first, there is an awesome sweatshirt on sale right now. Now, I know it's August. It's still hotter than hell out there, but it's 50% off. And I think it's a really cool brown sweatshirt. So I just wanted to toss it your guys' way because if you want to get, someone a Christmas present, but you don't want to spend all that money in December, well, you can get it right now, 50% off. Put it in your closet. December rolls around, and you are thanking yourself for getting an awesome gift, 50% off in August, or you can just buy it for yourself because I'm a huge fan of this sweatshirt. Chatsports.com/CLE hoodie. That link's in the comments and the description of today's video. Let's wrap up with this last quote from The Athletic where Jackson said, there just hasn't been much consistency and there hasn't been much of anything more than 10 yards downfield. Watson threw bad interceptions after getting caught locking in on one receiver each day of the joint practices. And by now, we already know this story. I know I'm a little bit behind, but we have tweets like this from Dawg, and Dawg was one of many who tweeted out, Deshaun Watson has thrown 3 interceptions to Eagle safety Reed Blankenship during joint practices. And that got twisted into basically Watson threw 3 straight picks to the same safety in the same day. No, what the reality was he threw 3 interceptions to one safety over 2 days, and the even further reality was he didn't even actually throw 3 picks to him. He were picked off twice, and one of those, the safety, was out of bounds. So quickly we've gone from 3 picks to 1 guy and 3 straight plays to 1, maybe 2 interceptions to 1 guy over 2 joint practices against the top NFC defense last year. I don't think that's the worst crime against humanity. So time will tell. But I'm still in on Deshaun Watson having a bounce back, breakout, whatever you want to dub it as, 2023 season. Because I know in training camp, they don't often show a lot of things. Also, teams like to be a bit more of a risk taker in training camp, meaning instead of just throwing it out of bounds, you might as well try and fit it into that wide receiver. Because if it is picked off, it doesn't actually matter. It's not a game. So you got a different mindset knowing, what do I have to lose? Sure, the DB makes a nice pick on me, but on the off chance he doesn't, I can start getting some really good reps in with my wide receivers and pushing the envelope a little bit. Whereas if I throw it out of bounds, what service does that do anyone? So what's your confidence level on a bounce-back year for Deshaun Watson? Scale it 1 to 10. I'm at an 8.2, 10 being he's going to be an all-pro player, all Pro Bowl player, whatever. 1 being he's going to be awful. I'm at an 8.2. Now, one quick news item I want to hit on before we really let you guys go here. Todd Bowles announced that Baker Mayfield is the Bucs starting quarterback. You're lying to yourself if you don't keep somewhat of a loose tab on all of your X's. So, yeah, this is the latest on Baker. No, there is no connection anymore to the Browns, so you can't even try and pretend like you were following Baker last year because you wanted to know if you get a 4th or a 5th round back pick from Carolina because of the stipulations in that trade agreement. But Baker is the starter. I wish him well. I wish him all the best down in Tampa Bay. I hope he can do well. I feel like the number one reason why people get so divided over Baker is if Baker does well in Tampa, the rest of the national media is going to shove that down Cleveland's throat, saying, this is why you should have moved on from Baker because Deshaun Watson sucks and you could have had Baker. So naturally now we kind of want to root against Baker a little bit to justify the move in our head when I think you could have the best of both worlds. Watson can do well and Baker can do well. All right, this has been an absolute episode of or movie of an episode or whatever. Trace, rapid fire, pick your card, buddy.
Going 8 of spades.
8 of spades, I like it. I'm going to go with 3 of clubs. 10 of diamonds. 10 of hearts, I beg your pardon. 10 of hearts. Okay, so David Njoku had his contract restructured while we're filming right now. All right, well, David Njoku just has his contract restructured just as I filmed all that at the beginning. So that makes things very wonderful for this cut right here. We'll probably have to splice in something at the beginning. So you're going to go through a time-traveling vortex where it's beginning, middle, end, and back to beginning. So we'll break down the David Njoku restructure in just a moment.